Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever struggled to find your purpose and fully live your life, then do we have the Claim Your Power show for you. Today I'll be talking with Mastin Kipp, the #1 best-selling author of Daily Love, blogger extraordinaire of The Daily Love, and author of a fantastic new book on elevating your life, Claim Your Power. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about going from powerless to powerful by dissolving hidden blocks and traumas and discovering your life purpose. That plus we'll talk about shaking barrels of monkeys, magical mirrors, and the never-ending story. A clothing line called Loving Yourself, why you want to be careful at 4 when hugging mom, and what in the world Carolyn Miss and the 9 Inch Nails have to do with anything.
That's amazing.
So welcome to the show, Mastin. Are you ready to shine?
That was the best introduction I think I've ever heard in my life. And the answer is yes, Michael, I'm ready to shine. Thank you so much for having me. That was amazing, dude. You're a rock star.
Awesome. Well, and coming from you, that actually means something. So thank you. In fact, that is the perfect segue. Can you take us back to the rock star days of age 21?
Oh, man. Yes, I was in Hollywood, California, and I've lived there for about 15 years. I go back and forth now between Asheville and Los Angeles. And I moved to Los Angeles to go to the USC and to study the music business, and basically very quickly dropped out, discovered cocaine, women, drugs, power, fame, and money. And that was my sort of introduction to Hollywood. I worked with a lot of bands, very successful bands, as an assistant, as a junior manager, helping with like a lot of massive tours, selling 20, 30,000 tickets per venue, a lot of rock bands, and definitely lived the sort of true Hollywood story, if you will, for a period of time before the drugs got the best of me.
So, and that's kind of, we won't go too story on you, but you said music exec day, at night something entirely different, which meant that your dream job was kind of short-lived.
Yes. Yeah. When I was 21 years old, I was hired as senior vice president of A&R at Flawless Geffen Records, and my job was essentially to discover new talent and to help sign them and cultivate them. And within a month or so, I was fired from that job due to some politics and significant drug use on my part.
So, fortunately at the time, fortunately maybe I'll put that in quotes, you also had a clothing line.
Yes. So after the music business and sort of the things came tumbling down, I made it my intention to try to feel as good off the drugs as I did on the drugs. I did not know about the term biohacking back then, but I definitely needed some help. And I went on a personal development journey. And one of the bands I was working with after I left the record label, started my own company, had a song in a movie that we may know called What the Bleep Do We Know? Mm-hmm. Very famous, sort of before the secret spiritual film, talks about quantum physics, and Marley Matlin's in that film. And I had a band who had a song in that film, and it was the first time I was ever invited to a spiritual event. There was at the Lowe's in Santa Monica. There was this fancy hotel. So I thought like nothing of it. I get there and there's like these like aura readings and chakra this and angel that and tarot that. And I'm like, what the hell is like? I'm so used to like hanging out with like rock stars and drugs and alcohol and like whatever this is. Like I don't even know what this is. At that event, there was a woman who was taking Carillion photography, which I thought Carillion was like a Carillion cruiser, which is like that's like a Carillion cruiser is what you call the Millennium Falcon. So I thought it was something related to Star Wars, but it wasn't. And I didn't even know what aura photography was. And I wasn't even interested. I wanted her phone number. She didn't give me her phone number, but she did give me a CD set called Energy Anatomy by Carolyn Mace. And it completely changed my life. And it was a big revelation to me that, choice was a big deal, and self-love, I didn't even knew what self-love was back then. And as a result, I thought, I'll take a lot of the skills that I learned about building brands and create this t-shirt line called Love Yourself, and did for a period of time. It did crash and burn because definitely wasn't living the message, but always have tried since that moment to really add value in any way that I can, take what I've learned and pass it on. And, those are very, very early days of getting sober and trying to figure out who I am and why I'm here and all that jazz. But a lot of pain there too, but also a lot of grace.
And speaking of grace, if we back up a few years back to when you were 22, you had a miraculous, I'll call it miraculous, pulling over by the police.
Yeah. I debated whether or not to put that story in there. But Yes, I was going through a breakup and very, very, very deep into cocaine addiction. And I was on the drug cocaine, and it was probably 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, driving home from Sherman Oaks to Santa Monica. I'd just gotten into an argument with my then girlfriend, and for some reason, I ended up pulling on a Ventura Boulevard and cutting off the only car on the road at that time, which happened to be a police car. And the car pulled me over, and I had this huge amount, probably an 8-ball below my seat, and being pulled over by the cops. And in that moment, like, everything kind of came into focus, and I was like, I am screwed. And I think for the first time in a long time, I started praying, and I said, "Dear God, if you let me get out of here, I promise I'll quit." And ended up leaving, and was almost scared straight. A couple days later, ended up flushing that stuff down the toilet. I was trying to do some more cocaine, but something in my body literally wouldn't let me do the drug. I can't describe it. I know that you in this audience understands divine intervention, stuff like that. That's the only thing that could possibly have happened at that time, because I wanted to do it so bad, but there was this deep knowing that if I did anything, if I took that drug, that I would die, and ended up just flushing it. And from that moment forward, decided that I wanted to feel as good off the drugs as I did on the drugs. And that has led me to, it's been about, I don't know, almost 15 years of seeking.
Awesome. And what would you say is the total comprehensive package, if there's a better way to put it, of the divine storm, your term, that was going on at that time, that really coalesced or motivated you for change?
Well, I think, yeah. So I think people can learn through joy, or they can learn through pain. Learning through joy requires a lot of faith, a lot of information and knowledge and mentorship and help and assistance and obedience to your intuition. Learning through pain is sort of standard human best practice. And so I think that God or the angels or life organizes events in your life to where essentially life becomes more and more against you, essentially, where like you can't make money, nothing's going right. It's like a rock bottom. And at that specific time in my life, the idea was, very much focused around sobriety. Mm-hmm. I never went to really total 12-step or rehab or anything like that. I sort of did it on my own somehow. But the whole focus at that time was like, kid, you got to get sober. That was like the deep message. And then from there, I started consuming personal development content like I was consuming cocaine before. It's it was just coming in. And upon learning more about the brain and why I was doing that, and working with innovative psychiatrist, Dr. Daniel Amen, who does SPECT imaging brain scans. Mm-hmm. The parts of my brain that cocaine stimulates are actually needed and necessary to be stimulated because of how my brain is working. So I was actually self-medicating at the time. I didn't know it. So again, a lot of compassion there. But it's been a journey. I think each time that there's a divine storm, because you don't just get one. I think it's a little bit of a redirection. It's almost like you're on different highways, and you're going off the highway. You get those divots that make a certain sound. And I think that the more you learn to pay attention to reading the tea leaves first, you don't have to go off a cliff to realize that you're off the road.
I call it cosmic guidance with a 2x4, and you can get it
totally.
with a straw first or a palm leaf if you're willing to listen.
That's right. That's right. I mean, the ultimate truth is your intuition's within you, and when you're obedient, you always make the right move, even if it's irrational. But calming down and learning how to be obedient and listen to your intuition, that's a master skill that takes, on this show, lifetimes, I could say.
So you just gave a really powerful word that we don't hear on the show very often. So I need to dive in there. What does obedience mean?
So I've done a lot of study of great artists, great entrepreneurs, great thinkers, great teachers. And one of the things they all have in common, whether it's Michael Jackson or Jesus Christ or anyone in between, is that they were absolutely obedient to, you could call it their intuition, their higher knowing, their whispers, their gut, their hunches, their, whatever you want to call it, their guides, their angels. You have a sense of a knowing that of what you should do, and it's a feeling in the body. It's not a mental concept. And the more that you can listen to or feel or tap into that, and then act accordingly in the moment, not a year, 5 or 10 years later, the better. I think one of the greatest, most powerful prayers ever uttered was Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, what we call the agony of the garden, the night before he's going to be crucified, where he said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, I don't want to do this. This is terrifying. I'm crying tears of blood, it's written. But, thy will be done, essentially. And so I think that that's ultimately what obedience is. It's not obedience to man-made structures. It's obedience to the wisdom within. So anything epic, anything great, anything amazing was done through obedience, whether it's Moses freeing, his people, whether it's, Abraham fulfilling his promises, whether it's Jesus fulfilling his promises, whether it's, Muhammad Ali training hard because he knew he had to. There's always a sense. One of my favorite stories about Michael Jackson is that he took 3 weeks in the studio because he heard in his mind a specific snare drum for Beat It, and no snare drum sample was coming, was able to match what he heard. Thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars spent trying to get a snare drum sound. And finally, a piece of equipment rolled off of a shelf and then fell down onto this big, almost like drum casing that was empty, and it hit it. And he goes, "That's the sound." And that is how obedient Michael Jackson was. When you look at people who are performing at the highest level, whether it's a dancer, an artist, a painter, a writer, they've put in practice to produce the myelin and the neural pathways to have the actual, skill to do whatever they're doing. But once they've done the work, what makes somebody great is that they channel something larger than themselves. And so the combination of skill plus that obedience is sort of what makes a rock star, or what makes the Michael Phelps. It's like it transcends from mere skill to art. And I think that obedience, is something that you respond to in the moment when you're performing, but it's also something that hovers. If you have an idea that's with you over a period of time that will not leave you alone, pay attention, and the faster you can learn to reply or respond or act, the better. So I would sort of loosely say that's how I would define obedience.
Beautiful. So going from there, I want to double back on another word. Then we're going to dive briefly more into your story, which is the power and importance of prayer.
Yes. So prayer is, this is not new. Prayer has been around since human beings have been around. But I think that prayer is often misinterpreted. It's most people when they pray, they say, "Dear God, make it the way I want it," instead of saying, "Dear God, show me how to walk in your will or in your path." And Carolyn Mace talks about how when you say a prayer, it is immediately answered. Your job is to interpret everything that happens afterwards as an answer to your prayer. So it can't be like prayer on your terms. It has to be surrender, again, obedience. So prayer is really sort of talking to God, if you will, and meditation is sort of listening to God, and wisdom is understanding that everything that's unfolding is an answer to your prayer, and to not learn to not take it as personal as maybe you've taken it, and really see the growth in whatever you're going through right now.
So that means when we see that it's not working, or in quotes, or not working on our timelines, is actually a divine plan in motion. Leave it alone.
Yeah, I would say that there's a sort of this Venn diagram of surrender and action, where you have to surrender and you can't do it really bothers me when people are like, Mercury is in retrograde, so it wasn't meant to happen. It's like, no, you didn't do anything. You sat in your apartment all day and stuffed your face with pizza. That's why it didn't happen. You know what I mean? Don't blame the stars for why you didn't take action. So you can't just outsource responsibility to Mercury being in retrograde. And trust me, my computer breaks all year long, not just in Mercury being in retrograde. So there's a sort of a superstition that I have to just let it go, which is not true. You got to do everything you can and then let go. So there's a great sort of Islam proverb that says, "Trust Allah, but tie up your camel."
I call it
right?
The two-step.
That's right. That's right.
So I love this segue. Let's go from tying up camels to starting blogs.
Sure. Same thing in a lot of ways. Yeah, The Daily Love was my former blog. It still exists today, but it hasn't been updated in years. I leave it there as sort of a testament to the previous work. But the only thing I knew how to do to add value at the time was to send out an email. And like the first email I ever sent out was to like me, and there was like 5 people on my list, like me, my second email address, and my parents and my friend, basically. So, but I counted my second email address as like an email, and I thought like, well, I can do this every single day. And that's literally how it started. It was not, there was no like clouds parting or, I wish I could see like these spiritual experiences that people have. I wish I could have them. I just sort of just knew I had to start writing. And then that started growing and, understanding that, content is important to put up online, and then figuring out ways to do that to add value. And people were responding and really liking what I was putting on. And I was really insecure about my own ideas. So I would surround myself with other thought leaders to kind of validate myself in a lot of ways. And then eventually that sort of translated into like, Mastin, like you're a teacher and it's time for you to teach. And so that's why I kind of shut down the Daily Love and asked myself again, who am I? And it's been sort of a slow unfolding into what I'm doing now.
Beautiful. So how did you go from starting this to maybe we'll pit stop at Kim Kardashian and then tie that into Oprah?
Sure. Well, when you publish and you put yourself out there, you just never know who's watching. And people are, at least people who I work with, who are in the spiritual world, who want to start a business, are so focused on millions of views or tons of this and tons of that. And they think that they post 3 times on Instagram and once on Facebook, they should be a millionaire. And what I really focus on is like lifestyle and practice and consistency. I think those are the most important things. And like, why are you doing this? And, for me, it's just like I just write once a day, and that's just what I do. And when you publish, there's a perception that you are an expert. And then people read your stuff and then they share it. And that's both how Kim and Oprah discovered me, was a result of consistent publishing. There's no magic formula. It's just my publishing was out there. Brittany Gastineau found my Twitter feed. She shared it with Kim. Kim liked it. Kim tweeted about it. Like, there's no formula there. It's just consistency and adding value. Same thing with Louise Hay and Oprah Winfrey. Both of them just found my stuff as a result of me publishing. And people ask a lot, like, how did you get on Super Soul Sunday? And there's no formula for that. The formula is add value and do your best and stretch yourself, but trust God and let go. Because especially Oprah, like I get a lot of questions about that. Like it's something that it has to be really, really organic. There's no 3 steps to Super Soul Sunday. It's just you have to just. It has to happen. It's very difficult but if you're not publishing and if you're not adding value, the likelihood of anyone finding your work is very low. In fact, it's probably 0.
You talk in your book about fear as your best friend. So forgive me for going there, but we were talking off air about what the Oprah experience was like. And I think this is certainly stepping into fear.
Oh my God. Well, so let me be clear. There's in the book I lay out this idea of like old model and sort of like head-based beliefs and like new model heart-based beliefs. And like there's a couple of these like old beliefs that are permeating in the personal development spiritual space that are completely misinterpreted and literally are lies. So one of them is that I have to change my thoughts and change my life. Like that's such an oversimplified truth. It's so much deeper than that, which we can get into. Mm-hmm. But the other one is that fear is the opposite of love and that perfect love casts out fear. I'm not going to use a cuss word on this podcast, but I'll say it's complete BS because we have amygdalas, we have a nervous system, we have cortisol and adrenaline and epinephrine. We have all of these internal mechanisms that are designed to notice a threat externally and then let us know when there's a threat. So like fear is a necessary process. Now people would say, Mastin, maybe I've died and gone to heaven, or I've had these transcendent ayahuasca experiences or whatever, and it's only love. It's like, cool, you're in the spirit realm. And now you're back in your meat sack and you have an amygdala and a brain, and it's not only love. And anyone who's had sexual abuse, or I've worked with Marines who have been in battle, like telling them that fear is the opposite of love doesn't do them any good. Telling them that fear is false evidence appearing real doesn't do them any good because it's not false in a human sense. It may be false in a Course in Miracles sense or in a spiritual sense, but when someone's traumatized, that information is no good to them because it only fuels them with fear and shame. So what we have to understand is that fear and ego has a purpose, and it's in us for a reason. Ego is not edging God out. ego is what helps me define what's yours, mine, and ours, so that I know what's mine. There's a difference between my wife and your wife. It's a specific difference, right? It's not just a wife, right? So fear is one of these things that is highly misunderstood. And what's happened in the personal development and spiritual space is they've traded words like the devil and Lucifer for fear and ego. So like now, like fear has become the new devil, and ego has become the new Lucifer. And it's like this thing to be avoided and feared. And it's like Voldemort. If I say something I'm afraid of, it's going to show up and destroy me. And if I think negative thoughts, then I'm going to get cancer. It's like, no, if you live in environmental toxins, you'll probably get cancer. So there's all of this insane superstition around fear. But what's so ironic about it is that if you look at, living your purpose and growing, or getting married, or your first kiss, or going to college, or making your first offer for a coaching package, or traveling for the first time as a single woman if you're in a divorce or something, like all of those experiences are predicated by fear, because we're stepping into the unknown. So fear is highly misunderstood, and unless you're like in a burning building, most likely fear is a sign that you're starting to live your purpose. So this advice that fear is the opposite of love has taken us way off course as it relates to what we should be focusing on. There's this idea that if I'm living a spiritual life, that everything's perfectly balanced and I'm always happy and I have the perfect amount of green juice and Lululemon pants and quinoa, and I live a perfectly balanced, stress-free life where all is coming to me and God is this vending machine that will just bring me money without me having to do anything. It's insane, right? Like we've sort of like turned God into like a vending machine that provides us everything that we want without any type of effort. That's called lazy, okay? So like on the spiritual path, especially because when people are on the spiritual path, typically they come to a spiritual path because there's unresolved trauma that has to be focused on. It's going to be a path of courage. It's going to be a path where we're facing fears daily. And the root word of courage comes from the French word cour, which is wisdom of the heart. And so when we're following our heart, when we're following our intuition, it's going to present us with things that we're terrified of. And the goal is to be able to move forward knowing that fear is a good thing. Unless, of course, you're in a burning building. We don't want anyone going into a burning building saying, Mastin said, face your fear. You got to have some common sense. But at the end of the day, it's really the opposite of what we've been told. And so a lot of times people will sort of unconsciously start to take fear and turn it into this like almost like the new devil, when really it's like your best friend in a lot of ways. So yeah, fear is misunderstood in a big way.
You're awesome. I love you, man.
Likewise, Michael.
So from there, I've got to go for the second one, which you said maybe we can come back to that. And sure. I'm going to go there. I'm going to seatbelt first. Change your thoughts, change your life.
Complete BS. And it's not, I mean, look, it's not BS, but it's sort of like saying like, turn the steering wheel to move the car. Well, there's other factors, like are you going uphill or downhill? Do you have gas or not? Are your brakes working? Like, do you have a hood over your car? Like, there's so many different things that go. Is your car in space, floating by itself? Is it on the moon? Like, where is the car? Like, there's so many other things. So, like, how many people have like said something like, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself. They got all the freaking affirmations, and as soon as they say it, 99% of them says, no, you don't. That's BS, right? Like, it's like. And there's like, well, no, I can't talk about that part of myself. I have to stuff that part down. And all is well. Like, but you're freaking out on the inside, right? Like that's most people. This is like the archetypal, like passive aggressive yoga teacher who thinks that like more down dogs will make her more loving. When it's like, no, like feeling your feelings and healing your trauma is really an important part of the mixture too. So, and by the way, nothing against yoga teachers. I love yoga teachers, but coming from Los Angeles, there's just a lot of yoga teachers who just are pissed off and they don't address this stuff because they try to asana it away, or we try to green juice it away, or we Lululemon it away, or we crystal it away. It's like, guys, that's just a rock if you're not doing the inner work. Like quinoa is just a starch. Kale is a plant. Like, do the inner work. And so I really think that it's important to understand that when we talk about the idea of change your thoughts, change your life, like, yes, thinking produces behavior, but what produces thinking? And it's the next level, which is emotional acuity or awareness. Because when you have a thought about life, like that person's a jerk, or, that person's not spiritual enough, or I can't date him because he doesn't know who Deepak Chopra is, like underneath that story is an emotion. And most people don't, know that, and B, don't know how to go into it without it being some sort of like vomit fest where they're just vomiting their truth and trying to call it authentic, which it's not. Or they just try to bond over their wounds, what Carolyn Mace would refer to as like woundology. But what we have to learn how to do is, and this is what the Claim Your Power book helps people do in a framework or a process, is identify those emotions and figure out like, why are they there? Like there's a good reason why they're there. Just like if I step on a nail, my foot is going to experience pain. If I'm experiencing negative emotion, it's a call for awareness. But if I'm too busy trying to chant the emotion away, it's no different than drinking the emotion away. It's exactly the same because I'm dissociating from it. So what we have to learn how to do is not only go into the emotion, but pay attention to why it's there, learn from it because there's deep wisdom in it, and then try to figure out, well, what belief is running me that's producing this emotion? And then, by the way, where the hell did that belief come from? What happened in my past that produced this belief? And start to realize, like, whoa, there's some stuff from my past I'm dragging into my future here. So I can't just chant it away. I actually have to do the hard work. And so I think what Claim Your Power is all about, what functional life coaching is all about, is it says, guys, look, like you're focusing on a symptom. So it's kind of like functional medicine. If I go see a functional medicine doctor and I have high cholesterol, they're not going to put me on a statin right away to lower my cholesterol because they're going to want to figure out, is it fatty liver? Is it prediabetes? Like, do you have high complement C4A? Like, what are the inflammatory markers inside the body that are producing this high cholesterol? And let's fix the root cause. But a lot of people just say, well, give me a pill and get the cholesterol down. But if you do that, you're never going to discover where it came from. And there's no difference between that and trying to chant it away or green juice it away or, bless it away. You got to figure out where it came from. And that's what Claim Your Power really is all about. And when you do that, that's when you can really step into a life of purpose.
Awesome. So let's go from there and let's talk about it. It's clear you are a fire hose and you're both on fire and a fire hose. What is your mission? Why did you write this book? What does trauma have to do with it? Because it is very clear you have a very intense focus.
I appreciate that. Trauma is let me kind of give some context to that answer because it's a multifaceted question. The definition of trauma essentially is a wound. Mm-hmm. That's essentially what trauma is. It could be a psychic wound, a spiritual wound, an emotional wound, and we don't need to have a trauma competition. Like, well, you know what? Like, I was molested when I was 3. Well, you know what? I was molested by 10 people when I was 4. Like, there's no like competition here. Like, you know what? Like, my parents got divorced when I was 10 years old, and then my mother killed my father, and then my father killed my mother. It's just like there's this. Sometimes people think I'd had the most significant trauma in order to qualify for this type of work. It's like, no, you could have just been left at the school bus stop for 10 extra minutes and your dad was 10 minutes late picking you up from school. That could be your trauma. Like, you don't know what it is. The election could be your trauma. Who knows, right? So what has to happen is we have to understand that we have wounds. And it's not to understand to commiserate over these wounds and talk about them and make them bigger. It's like if you know that you have a cut on your foot, it's like, cool, it's time for me to like disinfect it and then put a Band-Aid on it and take care of it. I'm not going to sit there and just keep reopening it every day, seeing how more blood could come out and have other people look at how much blood's coming out and feel sorry for me. That's not the goal. The goal is to look at it, disinfect it, and start the healing process. So that's what trauma is. Now, if we take a leap into the German language, Traum, Traum, which is trauma without an A, it means dream. So if we start looking at this, what this means is that trauma is a dream from the past about a wound. Now, if we go a little bit deeper, I think it's Albtraum means nightmare in German. So ultimately, a nightmare is something that wakes the sleeper from the dream, from a sleep state. So trauma is a nightmare of a wound from the past that's designed to wake you up. That's the purpose. It's to wake you up. It's a catalyst for growth. It's not something that you need to commiserate over and, get a bunch of people rallied against the person that hurt you and blame them. It's an opportunity to wake up. That's what's going to help you heal it. So when we look at trauma over the period of human history, essentially, if you read human history, it's sort of a documentation of how we've traumatized ourselves. And what we're learning in the field of epigenetics now is that trauma is hereditary and passed down from generation to generation. So you may not have experienced a sexual abuse, but maybe your grandmother did, and that was passed down into your genes, whether you're male or female. So we have to understand that trauma from a larger perspective is essentially a generational wounding that's passed down from generation to generation. And if you look at what's happening today, for example, in the world with the election, everyone wants to blame Donald Trump. It's like, guys, Donald Trump's a symptom, right? Something created Donald Trump. It's called trauma. And so we have to look at ourselves and our conditions and look at how polarized we are and look at why we're so polarized and why, if I say the word Donald Trump, you are going to just completely disown me unless I talk about what a monster he is, or if I agree with him, then there's a certain set of people that will like me and a certain set of people that won't like me. Like, underlying all of that is deep-seated trauma on both sides. That's all valid. Republican trauma, Democratic trauma, independent trauma, socialist trauma, communist trauma, it's all human trauma. And so my biggest mission in realizing this is going like, holy cow, like we're expanding exponentially with our technology. Like we got more technology changing in the next 15 years than we've seen in the last 50 years. And if we don't do something to also expedite our healing, we will self-implode. There's no way that we won't, because just like, we were made in God's image, we're making technology and AI in our image, and that trauma is being passed into the coding, and the data that the AI is analyzing, like a Facebook AI, it's analyzing trauma. It's becoming really aware of trauma, and then we create predictive technologies that will then start to predict trauma. So we need a reset and a framework that says, hey guys, let's pause for a second. Take a breath, and let's look at why you're doing this. Not why they're doing this, not why they're doing this. Why are you doing this? And let's go into you and figure out what's up with you. And so the Claim Your Power process ultimately is a process to sort of hopefully expedite the healing process. We don't have time to do this in 10 years of therapy anymore. We got to do it quickly. So my mission ultimately in my lifetime, hopefully I'll get there, maybe not, is to put an end to hereditary sort of passing of trauma, and to kind of get us all on the same page that, like, regardless of, political outcomes or socioeconomic outcomes or skin color, we all need to do this work. That's sort of my bigger why. And so anything that's aligned with that, I will absolutely do, whether it's leveraging technologies, whether it's, going deeper in meditation and getting the best people in the world together to figure this stuff out. But trauma to me is what's causing all of this other stuff that we're seeing in the world today. And it's unresolved, and it's running rampant.
I couldn't agree more. It's why I do a lot of coaching work. And if you don't go for that emotional family trauma, if you don't go for the wounding, you can do everything you want. The person can seem like they're doing great, they're on fire, and they pull out the revolver, and there goes the foot every single time. That's right. So, the bigger mission for me is, how do we stop this quickly? Yeah. Because we're growing faster and faster with tech, and our consciousness needs to catch up. So what are, and I believe you mentioned in your book, it's one of my favorite all-time quotes as well, which is Einstein saying that we can't solve a problem with the same level of energy that it was created.
Right.
How do we step outside of ourselves enough to begin healing these wounds?
I don't think we step outside of ourselves. I think we step inside ourselves. I think we spend too much time arguing with people on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and not enough time looking at what's running me. So it's we got to peek under the hood and recognize guys, the problem is so not out there. Okay? It's not. The problem is internal, and it's kind of like blaming McDonald's for your heart attack. McDonald's did not cause you to have a heart attack. You stuffing your face with Big Macs for the last 30 years maybe had something to do with it, right? So we have to start to look at the internal dialogue, and I think that's the next level for personal development and the spiritual work, is to get into the deeper work. And that's why you're seeing the emergence of things like EMDR or tapping or Kundalini yoga, because the standard affirmation, vision board process ain't working. It's not working. And people know it, and they're not getting the results. So we got to go deeper. I think that's the answer. And people have to want it. And my job as a teacher and marketer is to make that transformation desirable, because it's I can't go out there and say, cool guys, so come reclaim your power. We're going to re-look at your deepest wounds, and then, see it from a new place, and then you'll be good. We have to actually understand, when you do this, here's the benefit. And the real benefits are, being able to take care of your family, the abundance that you were really promised, living your purpose and finding out what makes you unique, making your mark on the world. These are the benefits of doing this work, the weight loss, the energy, the entrepreneurial success, whatever it is that you're looking for, that's the benefit. And so my job is to figure out how to, basically convince people that this is the work that's worth doing, and to put down the conversation around blaming others and to start looking at how you are generating this experience for yourself.
Awesome. So we've got kind of a self-selected audience that are into this, that are wanting to shift, that are wanting to make the changes. Do they start looking at what the limiting behaviors are, the limiting phrases? Where do they go to start recognizing the boat anchor they're wearing around with them?
Sure. That's a great question. So I wrote Claim Your Power. Let me give context. So I wrote Claim Your Power after a decade of doing this work in retreat centers. Like I would go to Bali or Maui. I'd have like 30 or 40 people in a room, and it was like a lab for like 7 to 11 days. Some of my retreats are 28 days long. I would do online courses. I would do one-on-one work. I started noticing all these common patterns and getting really quick results with people where like they would be in therapy for 10 years, and literally a half an hour session with me, something would happen that was way more efficient. And so I'm not touting my own horn. I'm just saying that what I've discovered is a step-by-step process to get results quicker. So you can think about like one way to get a ride is to maybe call the taxi company and have them come pick you up and hope that they have enough cars. Another way is to download an app called Uber or Lyft and hit a button and they come to you. It's just a more efficient process for the same outcome. So I really see Claim Your Power in this process as sort of a innovation on a lot of the processes that exist today to get a quicker result. And so with that said, I wrote the book so that people who can't come to Maui or Bali or to my retreats or to my seminars have access to this information. And it's actually a very simple process, but don't confuse simple with easy, and don't think that you can master it on your own, because you definitely need some support around this. But essentially what you do is you figure out, what limiting behavior am I doing, whether it's stuffing my face with sugar or calling my wife some negative name, or, I'm not getting the financial results, or whatever it is, I'm spending too much money, whatever the behavior is, look at that behavior. Now, conventional wisdom would say, oh, you're drinking too much alcohol, just stop drinking alcohol. Like, it's really not that simple. As, we've seen the relapse rates of the 12-step program is over 60%. So like we have to see that 12-step is saving lives, but we could tighten up and make it a little bit more efficient. So we got to look at the behavior, and we got to say, okay, what is the limiting behavior that I want to change? So let's just say it's drinking. Okay, cool. Well, what's the story that I'm telling myself about why I'm drinking? The story might be, well, I just deserve it at the end of the day. Cool. Awesome. Well, why do you feel like you deserve it at the end of the day? Well, but really the truth is, at the end of the day, I'm really stressed and sad. All right, cool. Well, let's talk about why you're stressed and sad. Like, let's go into that sadness, and you're going to feel some emotion. This is usually where people just want to drink away or eat away or, ohm and chant and stuff like that. But the goal is to really go into the body. And, the work of the late Dr. Candace Pert in The Molecules of Emotion really points to this. And also Dr. Jeffrey Bland, who's the father of functional medicine, points to this, is that, the body remembers. And so when you're going for the drink or you're going for that external thing to consume, you're trying to feel better, but you want to understand why you're not feeling good in the moment. And so the sadness will come, or the powerlessness will come, and you got to give yourself the opportunity to feel that, and then try to discover, like, hey, what belief am I believing right now that is producing this emotion? And it's usually some version of, I'm either alone, I'm powerless, I'm not enough, some version of that. And then you have to ask yourself, well, where the heck did I pick that belief up? I don't remember consciously picking that up. And typically it's before the age of 10. Most people, if they can't remember before the age of 10, maybe it's something that you can remember happening a couple of days ago that could at least get you in the zone. But the idea is, maybe there was a trauma, maybe there was a moment where dad forgot you, where you decided I'm not enough. And that has sort of been unconsciously decided by you at a younger age. And the goal is to then understand, like, hey, maybe that's not the best thing for me to have a 7-year-old running my life right now. Maybe I need to mature that part of myself. And what did I delete, distill, distort, or generalize in that moment? Or what was happening right before that moment of hurt? And you'll realize that there was actually some wholeness and some beauty there, sort of that natural state. And then the work is about integrating it and recognizing, like, well, what else could this mean besides just I'm a loser, or I'm alone. Maybe it's the beginning of my spiritual journey. Maybe it's this had to happen so that I can have empathy for anyone who's ever been through this, so that I could help them, because other people don't have the resources that I have. And so it's a really efficient process to really get down to like what that root cause is, and then start to do the work to heal that process quickly. It doesn't have to take 10 years. It can take a half an hour.
I would love to jump in for a second, and you share in your book an original incident of yours that all the way back at age 4, if I understand,
Yes.
that guided, for lack of another word, guided you at least until the age of 30.
Yes. So like when I did this work, I realized that like, oh my God, like I just could not get it together with girls. Like I couldn't do it. This wasn't working. So I did this work and I realized that when I was about 4 or 5 years old, my mother was coming home from Toronto, Canada. We were in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and she had a significant back surgery. She died twice on the operating table. She had a broken back. And she was totally cut up and stitched up. And it was a few days after the operation, and she was coming home. And she was out on the tarmac in the airport. This is before 9/11. And I ran out, and I literally like leaped onto her as she was on this stretcher. And she hugged me. She's like, "Oh, honey." And she was like, "Oh." But like everybody around her like freaked out. Like, "Oh my God, this is awful." She's okay. And like I felt like I did something wrong. I had no awareness that my mom was in surgery, that she was in pain. I was just happy to see her as a 4-year-old child. And I decided in that moment as a 4-year-old unconsciously that when I expressed my love, I hurt people. And so that then ran me from 4 to 30 and helping me sort of see like, hey, like that might not be true. No wonder I'm getting it all wrong in the love department. I think if I love someone, I'm going to hurt them. So of course I'm pushing them away. Anyone who had that belief would push them away. So it's the understanding of this that says, hey, you know what? Like, that's okay. And then to recognize, like, hey, you know what? Like, that's not just some work I did a couple years ago. Like, now it's my job because that's a rehearsed pattern over time.
Mm-hmm.
I got to really work to express love and recognize it will not hurt them or me. And so it becomes a part of our purpose and our gift, and a part of healing is to recognize it's not like a one-time thing where like you did the work in the past. It's sort of something that you live with now, and it's a part of who you are.
You say, thank you so much for sharing. You say in the book, in order to change the story, OIs, original incidents, must be seen with new eyes.
Yes, that's right.
What does that mean, and how did you do that in this situation for yourself?
Sure. So a lot of times, so OI is original incident. It's like what happened in the past that produced this outcome. And so for me, the old belief was I jumped on my mom, I hurt her. So when I express my love, I hurt people. But what happens is when the brain experiences pain, it deletes, it generalizes, and it distorts. So that means I'm not remembering the entire picture. I'm also not seeing what else was going on, and I've only tended to focus on the negative. So when I go back and revisit that memory, it's like, well, also your mother was experiencing pain and really happy to see you. The people who were concerned were concerned for her well-being. So there was a lot of care there too. Right before I jumped on her, I was sitting like in the airport looking out, seeing the plane come in with nothing but just tons of positive anticipation and excitement. So like you were excited, you ran, you didn't know any better, and you hurt your mom, but she was still happy to see you, and everyone around her was just trying to care for her. That's a very different memory than like you jumped on your mom, you bad kid, how dare you, you hurt her, which is kind of how it translated over time. And nobody back then even said that. That was my internal mechanism. So maybe it's every time I express my love, it's reciprocated even if there's pain. Like that's a completely different meaning, right? And that, just because I created pain for somebody that I love doesn't mean that I was intending to. So we have to go back and look at it from a new perspective. And so the book, Claim Your Power, if this sounds really trippy, is sort of a process over 40 days to help guide you through this so that you can do this for yourself and really have some coaching around it as well. So you can see it from the perspective of a facilitator too.
Thank you so much. What does understanding our emotions really have to do with it?
Well, so emotions are like everything. We set goals in life. I don't care if your goal is to not have a desire like Buddha, right? It's still a goal. The reason why we set goals is because there's an emotional payoff that we're going for. So I might want to make more money so I feel more significant, I feel more certain, I feel more free. I might want to have a relationship so I can feel more passion. I might want to lose weight so I can feel more energy or self-respect. But when we understand that the goal that we're going for is really an emotional sort of target, then we can start to realize like, hey, maybe the reason why I set my goal, I got it, and I'm not happy is because I was focused on the wrong target, which was the external thing versus the internal emotion. And really, life is motion, emotion. right? Like life in motion. That's what emotion is. And so if I'm in a negative emotional state, it's really a call for awareness. If I'm in a positive emotional state that's authentic and not fueled by cocaine, and it's long term, that's what Joseph Campbell would say, is following your bliss. And so really life is an emotional game. We're trying to go from essentially emotionally in debt to emotional wealth. And in that process, that's what the spiritual journey really is all about. So ultimately, people are trying to be on the spiritual path to feel better. And what we help people do in the Claim Your Power book and really all of my work is to get crystal clear on what are the emotions that you're trying to go for. How can you stop trying to consume them from the world and put other people sort of in power positions to be the only sources of this emotion and really start to generate that emotional state from within yourself. And that's what claiming your power really is recognizing you're on the hook for being responsible for how you want to feel and creating that in your life, not the people out there.
Thank you so much. And that's a mighty woohoo!
Totally.
What is purpose with a big P, and how does that tie into our emotions?
Sure. So purpose is a word. Like I speak at Hay House conferences, right? And like there'll be like a couple thousand people in those rooms. And I'll ask people like, what is purpose? And I get like 30 different answers. It's helping other people. It's a higher calling. It's my mission. Purpose is to take care of other people. Like there's really no common definition of purpose. But if I were to say, well, what's the sun? Everyone would tell me the exact same answer. It's a star in the sky that lights up the sky. Like there's no fighting that definition. So I think first we have to have a common definition of what purpose is. And then understanding how that applies to emotions will be much easier. Yes, it has something to do with service. Yes, it has something to do with mission. But ultimately, purpose is an emotional game. So I define purpose as an emotion that you generate within yourself and then you share with others, essentially. That's about it, right? And it's like you got to focus on yourself first. You got to focus on your higher power. And from that place, then you can start to focus on other people. Most people have it the other way around. They think that purpose is an emotion that you consume from others and kind of sort of keep for yourself a little bit. And so ultimately, we have to realize that the purpose of your life is to feel good and to get clear on the emotions that you want to feel. And for you and me, it might be different. And to recognize that as I progress and grow over my life, the goals or the outcomes that I'm going for will change and grow and evolve, but the emotional targets will remain the same. And when you realize that like my purpose is not my job, my purpose is not to be a parent, my purpose is not any of those things, then when you lose your job or God forbid you lose a child, it is a tragedy, but it's not the tragedy of losing a purpose. Because when you feel like you've lost your purpose, that's when like suicidal thoughts start to creep in, when you feel like you're not useful. So you can lose a job or you can go through tragedy but still have purpose. And this is a really rewarding thing. So the number one thing is, what's the emotional targets that I'm trying to hit? What do I got to do to cultivate that within myself and connect to a higher power? And then how can I share it with other people? And when you start to think this way, typically it turns your life upside down because most people are sort of in the consumption of emotions rather than in the sort of the generation or creation of emotions.
Beautiful. Thank you. From there, one more question on this topic, I guess, and then we'll dive into a quick wrap up and maybe time for a short meditation. What is the importance of the two-letter word no?
It's a complete sentence. And most people who are listening to this podcast probably have spent most of their life helping others and serving others and have sort of been the, lack of a better term, the codependent in their relationship. So no is really important because the greater the no, the greater the yes. So this is not about being selfish, but there is a level of like, you are allowed to set boundaries and people will not die. It's okay. Boundaries are healthy. So especially when you're trying to live your purpose, especially people who have been with you for a period of time, they're going to say, oh, you're all spiritual now. I know who the real you is. Like, this isn't who you really are. I know who you really are. And they try to unconsciously kind of pull you back into those same patterns because they're threatened by your growth. So learning how to say no and recognizing that, like, yes, you can be new and you can be new in this moment is a really powerful thing. It's not the only thing, but is a highly, highly important process for sure.
Awesome. Where's meditation fit in with this?
Well, I look at meditation from a functional perspective, right? Like, I think that meditation absolutely is a way to listen to your higher wisdom, but essentially what meditation does is it calms down the nervous system And when you're not in fight or flight and you're more calm, you can see greater possibilities and greater outcomes. When you're really stressed, it's very difficult you can only kind of see what's right in front of you. So it's anti-inflammatory. It helps you see a broader perspective. It helps you hear your intuition. And it's something that should be practiced daily, like taking a shower.
Awesome.
It's a shower for your mind.
So I'm going to throw on my coach's cap here as well, because I don't like people just to listen to the show. I need them to do some work afterwards.
Yes.
Or else it's just chewing gum. So what one homework assignment would you give people today?
I think that you should make a list of the top 10 things that you're afraid of that are not, ISIS or something like that, like things that you've been avoiding. And arrange them by the most fearful thing to the least fearful thing. Mm-hmm. And if you aren't entirely sure what's most and least, that's fine. Just make it up. And then look at the thing that you're most afraid of and then go do that.
Woohoo!
No big deal.
I love it. From there, Jessica, my wife, she's the producer. She always likes me to ask a question for parents for their kids.
Love it.
What advice would you give for parents today to help their kids?
Sure. I have no children. I'm not a parent, but I would echo the advice of Dr. Shefali, who wrote Conscious Parenting, which is that if your children could speak to you, they would say, yes, you can lead me, and yes, I need you as a role model. But most importantly, if you want me to live my purpose, go live yours. Don't hide behind your kids. Don't blame them for why you're not doing your thing. Set an example, because your children will definitely pay attention to what you do 1,000 times more than they pay attention to what you say. So if you want your children to be great, set the example and be great yourself. Don't hide behind them.
From there, what personally brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
Gosh. I think, every time someone gets this, I'm so lit up by the idea that, in that moment they have been liberated, even if it's just temporarily from their trauma. To me, that is a huge moment. Lately, what gives me the major woohoo is that we just got a cat, which is the first time I've had a pet in a very long time. I'm not a cat person, but I am now, and his name's Magic, and this guy is a beast. And anytime he goes, we have this little thing that he chases, looks like a rat or a mouse, and every time he chases that thing, he tacks it he's all in, and it makes me laugh. Just hysterically. I love that guy. I understand when people talk about their cats now. I never got it, but now I get it.
I have a cat in the studio right now, Sir Meowsers, and he used to be an amazing, champion birder. Now he's an indoor cat. And when he rolls over, he's actually spring-loaded.
Yeah, totally.
And
totally. I get it. I totally get it. I never used to get it, but I got it now.
Awesome. So where can people go to find out more, to find your work, to find your books?
Oh, awesome. So my website is just Mastin Kipp, Mastin Kipp, KIPP.com. And if you go over to claimyourpowerbook.com, there will be all kinds of resources there, plus a course that should be up. I'm not sure when this podcast is coming out, but it'll be up towards the middle to end of July, where you can kind of go through the course or go through the book and have a course along with me, so that you have me as your coach for 40 days too, which will be awesome.
Awesome. So before we dive into a really brief meditation, any last words of wisdom you want to share with people?
I would just say that, it's time to just have small, tiny baby steps of courage every single day. You can really move the dial forward. So for every bit of meditation that you do one thing that scares you too.
Woohoo!
Awesome.
So what would you like to share with us for a brief meditation?
Well, I think I just invite everyone for a moment just to close your eyes. And unless you're driving, I invite you just to kind of put everything down and put your phones down and put any social media away. And I invite you to take 3 deep breaths. Take a deep breath in and take in a little bit more air, and then hold the breath and squeeze the body. Exhale, let it go. And I invite you to take 2 more deep breaths, just like this. Inhaling, holding the breath, squeezing the body, and exhaling. One more time, deep breath in. Hold the breath, squeeze the body. Exhale, let it go. And just for a moment, even if you have a lot going through your mind, or if you have lots of thoughts, just see if you can quiet your mind for a moment and just be here with us. There's nowhere else to go. There's nothing else to do. You're just here with us. And see if you can presence the idea that right now, all of your needs are met. Right now, everything's okay. And I'd like you to, just for a moment, bring to mind that one thing that you're most scared of. It could be leaving a relationship. It could be saying I love you. It could be starting a business. It could be publishing your Facebook page. It could be making an offer. It could be doing an intervention with your parents. Whatever it is. It could just be giving up sugar. Just see yourself and the thing that you're most afraid to do. And see yourself taking an action and actually facing this fear, taking the step. And step into it. Step into that outcome. See yourself facing this fear. And notice that even though it's a fearful or scary moment, that still in this moment all your needs are met. And could you see it working out? Could you see that your deepest fear actually never came true? And it was just a ghost. It was just a phantom from the past. And could you see yourself taking another step and another step and another step? And every time you take a step towards doing something that you're afraid of, could you see yourself being met with success and being met with support where you didn't realize it was going to come from? And could you see yourself doing this for the next 7 days, just every single day, taking a tiny baby step towards what you're afraid of? And over the next 30 days, next 6 months or year, what would the next year be like if just once a day you faced a tiny fear and moved forward? What could possibly happen? What grace or synchronicities or miracles could happen in the next year if you did this just once a day? See yourself being met with success. See yourself being met with resources. See yourself being met with all the good stuff. And then see yourself as someone who faces your fear every single day and know that as you do, all your needs will be met just like they always have been. You never walk alone. Whenever you're ready, take a deep breath in. Hold the breath. Squeeze the body. Exhale. Whenever you're ready, open your eyes.
Woohoo!
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Mastin. This has been so much fun. I love the mission you're on. We support you. We support you. We support you.
Right on, Michael. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to be here. And thank you so much. It was just awesome speaking with you and really grateful to connect with you today.
Thank you so much. For everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, claim your power, and take baby steps towards your courage, and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you, Mastin.
You're so welcome. So welcome, Michael. That was awesome, man.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!